Hi everybody. Today we are talking about adult protective services and how family caregivers and friends with really good intentions can be investigated or suspected or questioned by APS and what you can do about it. Another question I often receive from caregivers is, how do we make APS go away? Do they have to stay involved? What if my mom or dad doesn't want APS coming to their house? I will answer that question in another video coming up later this week. Now, the easiest way to be notified about my new videos is to, one, like this video and click the follow button on this channel. That way, anytime a new video comes up, you will receive a notification. So let's talk about adult protective services. APS is a government agency within every county who is responsible for investigating suspected abuse and neglect from family members and other people, but also self-neglect, which means an older person who may live alone or may live with family members, but who isn't taking care of their health. Maybe they're in and out of the emergency room a lot. Maybe neighbors are saying, oh my gosh, I see them and they're in dirty clothes all the time. I'm really worried about them. And so these are issues that get reported to APS. Many times it's in conjunction with the local police department where reports are filed. Now, abuse of the elderly happens within family members. Family members are very commonly the abusers, but family members are very commonly really good, honest caregivers who get themselves into trouble because they do things that they think are innocent that other people see as not so innocent. And so I'm going to give you examples during this video. I'll also share at the end how you can respond if APS contacts you and says, hey, you know, your sister says you're stealing from mom and dad, or the neighbors have reported that you live with your parents, but it doesn't seem like they're getting good care. If this is your first time here, I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. If you want to learn more about me, below this video are links to my professional background, ways to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me, and a lot of helpful free information on my website. Please do like this video, follow my channel, comment, share your story, say thanks. It helps other people find their way here. So how does all this get started? Most caregivers, whether they're family or friends, you want to be helpful, right? But sometimes what you don't understand is being helpful can be viewed as getting too involved in somebody's personal life or their personal business, like making healthcare decisions or paying bills or attending doctor appointments. And in over 20 years of my professional experience, I have worked a lot with the police and with adult protective services because many of my clients were older adults and people with disabilities who did have trouble caring for themselves. Now, not all of them were reported to adult protective services, but some were. And so I worked with APS and the police to resolve these issues for families. And so a lot of times family members are like, well, how does this even happen? How does the government, how does APS and the police get involved in my personal life or in the life of my parents? Well, it's actually very simple. The simple answer is that somebody was concerned, they picked up the phone, and they made a report. I have people who call me all the time that say, oh gosh, my neighbor down the street, nobody visits, and I've been helping out for a long time, and I can't keep helping, and it's just a bad situation. In these cases, I always say, you know, err on the side of judgment. Try to get a hold of somebody in the family. If they're not stepping in, make a report so that somebody does something. Some adult children call me and say, hey, I think my sister's stealing, or, you know, I can't go see my mom or dad. They're preventing me from visiting, or I can't make a phone call. I'm like, well, what do you want to do about it? Your first step, report it to the police, APS, get it on the record, and then beyond that, we can figure out where to go from here. I can help you with that. So let me share a couple of situations where people outside the family can make a report and why. There's something called mandatory reporting, and mandatory reporters are, number one, healthcare providers. So a primary care physician, first responders at 911, doctors in hospital emergency rooms, sometimes in-home care agencies. And so let's just talk about a primary care physician. How often do you, the caregiver or a caregiver, go with a parent or an older adult to the doctor and you do all the talking? Do you ever think how that might appear? Do you think it might appear that you're controlling the situation? If you are not that person's medical power of attorney, you can get into a lot of trouble and a lot of suspicion if you appear to be controlling that person's care and you speak for them, even though you have good intentions. And even if you are the medical power of attorney, you should know not to control that conversation. Let your parent or your loved one talk to the doctor. If you want to say something, ask permission and then say something. Then let's take this a step further. Then there's issues with medical care and making decisions and things like that. Simple thing, if you're involved in helping to manage medications and attend doctor appointments, it's important to understand what your role is. If you are a medical power of attorney agent with or without experience. Very, very important to be sure that you're doing things accurately. And if you're giving advice or making recommendations, you're not doing that based on just what you think, what your experience is. Your advice is factual. It's based on facts. It's based on research. It's based on discussions with doctors or other experts who have experience making these decisions. Because a lot of times what happens, and you know this if you're a caregiver, caregiving is trial and error. You make a mistake and you learn. You make a mistake and you learn. Well, in these situations, you don't want to be making mistakes with medications or decisions about medical care. Because if you make a rush decision, if you make a bad decision and something happens, your siblings, other family members may blame you and hold you responsible for not being thorough. You know, making poor decisions about medical care or anything else, right? It's no different than making a poor decision to allow an elderly person to live in an unsafe situation. You know, mom or dad, grandma, aunt or uncle, they have memory loss. Yet you leave them at home during the day when you know that they may walk out that front door and get lost, or they're going to get behind a wheel of a car and possibly have an accident and they shouldn't be driving. Or maybe they leave the stove on and they start a fire, or forget to turn off the sink in the bathroom and it floods, or something else happens, right? You know they have memory loss. If you don't do something, you are as much a part of that problem as anybody else. You're allowing self-harm or self-abuse or harm to other people happen because you're not doing anything. Number 2 on the list of mandatory reporters, banks and credit unions. Anybody working at a bank or a financial firm has a duty to report if they see suspicious activities. So, another very innocent situation. You're the caregiver. Older person can't drive anymore, so you take them everywhere. So you go to the bank. Do you go up to the teller window with them? Do not do this. Do not go up to the teller window unless you are known to the banker, unless you are a financial power of attorney on that account. And even then, you can be suspect. Because when you present yourself at a bank and you're with somebody, you could be influencing them to take out money. You could be influencing them to write checks. So when you become involved in somebody's finances, you have to be very, very careful and very, very transparent that you're not doing this to have any kind of personal gain, have anybody else have any personal gain. You're doing this all above board because you can easily be reported to the police as, well, this person shows up at the bank all the time with Mrs. Smith, and I just have a bad feeling about that person. This is how innocent people get in trouble. Let's take this banking thing another level. CPAs, people who do taxes, financial advisors, wealth planners, any of these people are mandatory reporters. And while these people have a confidential relationship with a client, a fiduciary relationship, right? If they see that somebody they've known for 20 years all of a sudden is making bad financial decisions, taking out huge withdrawals, giving money to charities or kids or, things that are just out of character, they have a duty to report. Now, the problem is, who do they report to? So one thing I recommend is if you are a person and you are doing your financial and medical power of attorney, make sure you have a power of attorney protector or an advisor. This is an independent person separate from that agent that you appoint who can get that phone call from a bank, a CPA, a financial planner saying, hey, you know what? I see you're the protector or advisor here. Think there's some fishy stuff going on you might want to investigate. Now, if that's not set up, the CPA or the financial or the wealth planner is going to try to talk to somebody in the family. And if you're that person, right, it means you have to do something. Because if you don't do something in a certain time frame, they have a duty to report it to the police and to Adult Protective Services. So again, you can't just ignore this, right? So let's say that you are the good family member, you've done nothing wrong, just trying to trying to help, and you've made these silly mistakes that have gotten you to now be a suspect of elder abuse, or stealing money, or not making good health care decisions, or letting your parent with memory loss live at home when you know it's not a good idea. How can you respond to APS if you become this suspected abuser? Again, assuming that you're innocent and you haven't done anything wrong. Be transparent and work with Adult Protective Services. Do not see them as the enemy. See them as somebody who, thank God, somebody made a report because they were worried about your loved one, okay? See them as wanting to work together with you in the best interest of your loved one to prove that there is nothing going on. To do this, though, you have to understand how the opposite side sees what you've done as questionable, right? You got to see both sides. You have to look at this as having a plan and a strategy to say, okay, here are the facts. This is what happened. And going forward, to avoid being suspected, this is what I'm going to do. And going forward, so it doesn't look like my parents are self-neglecting their care or refusing care that they really need, this is my plan, okay? That's how you respond. From a caregiving perspective, knowing risks of doing this or not doing this, or making a decision, and the potential harm that can result, right? So big picture, more than just like what's in front of you, but sequentially what can happen. If you don't know those risks and you don't have that knowledge, you can very easily become a suspect of the police or Adult Protective Services. Because if you are doing things, and I'm going to go back to the medical, if you're, a parent's making health decisions and you're helping them and you're not being thorough and investigating it, and the decisions are turning out poorly, well then you can be a party to those bad decisions, right? You can be a party to the harm if you don't have plans and precautions of how to work through all this. And I know this can be like impossible, right? If you have a parent or a grandparent who's like, I don't have dementia, I don't have Alzheimer's, I don't need any help, I am not leaving this house, until I'm dead. If that is your situation and you feel stuck, and APS gets involved, there's a lot of things that you can do to resolve this situation. And it's a very long discussion, or it can be, but I can help you with those. There's a button below. You can schedule a consultation with me. So as you can kind of see by the information I've shared here in the stories, just a couple of examples, suspicion, allegations about elder abuse often happens to very innocent people who are trying to do good. Now, it can also happen, again, through actions of family and friends and strangers who don't have good intentions. They are doing bad things. They're stealing money. They're not allowing people to get care. They're isolating them. A lot of that happens, okay? But either way that you look at it, the involvement of adult protective services can be a good thing if you know how to work with the situation. Now, there may be cases where you actually want to make a report, and you do, and nothing happens. Well, sometimes the county where you live in may have such a backlog of reports that they may not be able to get to this for a month or 2 months, and you're like worried about, like, oh my God, something's going to happen today, right? In those cases, then you do need to contact somebody else, a care expert like myself, somebody who can advise you on what to do. The message here is to understand that these things happen. If you're innocent, they're explainable. You can work with APS. If you're not innocent, that's a whole nother story. That's another video. I thank you so much for being here. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. You want to learn more about me, links with my professional background, how to consult with me are below. Please do like this video, follow my channel. It helps other people find their way here. Even more so, comment, share your story. I respond to all comments on my videos. Even if you just say thank you, I appreciate that. It helps other people find these videos throughout the world who are looking for hope, help, and support. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you soon in another video.